The Dentalpreneur Podcast. Okay, doctor, it's time to put down that handpiece. You're listening to the show dedicated to helping dentists get their lives back. It's time to decrease your stress, increase your profitability, and regain your passion. Now introducing your host, Dr. Mark Costas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dentalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Costas. What's up, my friends? I hope you're doing great out there today. I am really excited because I'm going to be talking to somebody that is very inspiring and inspirational, and he also has a really cool business story, as well as we have similar interests and hobbies. So this is going to be a fun one. Let's welcome to the podcast today, Tommy Morales. He's the founder and CEO of 26XL Dental Builders. I always screw that up, Tommy. Tommy Morales has completed over 1,000 dental-specific construction projects, bringing unmatched knowledge, experience, and patience to every build. With more than 30 years in construction, 15 of those focused on dental practice projects, Tommy has mastered every detail from the foundation to the roof. His expertise allows himself to effectively address the unique challenges that often arise in dental practice builds. What's up, Tommy? How you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing good, Doc. Doing well. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. You and I, gosh, we're road warriors. We see each other at lots of different conferences. You've always been super generous in supporting a lot of our live events, so I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Tell us about
good.
Tell us about your history in construction in general, and then 15 years ago, you kind of pivoted and went mostly into dental.
Yeah.
So tell me about your story.
So I started out in construction. It was a family business. We're a really small company, here out of San Antonio, Texas. And we were specifically, it was electrical contracting, but we were a really small company. So, we had to do a lot of different things. And every so often I have a brother who's passed now since, but he would always bring these unique jobs where he would do about a dozen or so construction projects. And I always liked those because, for years, I was a kid. I didn't know any better. I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I'd sneak off in the company trucks and with my brothers and my dad. I'd ride my bike to the shop because the shop was close to our house. I'd jump in on there, and I'd go during off days or holidays from school to go to a job to go work. And I wasn't getting paid or anything, but I didn't need any money. I didn't know anything about money back then. So over the years, I got the experience and stuff. Was working for the family company, and we're doing these construction projects. It was neat because it was something different than electrical. So we're doing some framing, some drywall, some painting, which I didn't really care for too much. Still don't like that much, but we were doing it all. My brothers were really key on making me start from the bottom, which I appreciate nowadays. And so I learned all that. We're doing those kind of works, and I did that for 23 years. We had lost a brother, and I just was like trying to refocus and trying to stay on task, and decided I just wanted to do something different. Because you start thinking about the meaning of life and things, and like, man, is this where we just get up, go to work, do the same thing, do jobs, make payroll, blah, blah, all this stuff. And so I left the family company and decided I was just going to do something entirely different. Didn't know what that was for a while. I was doing handyman services and work like that. And then I got a call from my sister who was working for a DSO at the time. And she called me and she says, hey, they need some help up here in Dallas if you want to help. I said, sure. So that was when I first got introduced. We had done some dental offices ourselves at the family company beforehand. So I had a little bit of experience in, the systems and how things operated, but those were like big, like 15, 20 up big DSOs, nationwide DSOs we were doing for it, but I didn't know what a DSO at the time was, but back in the family company. So when I went to work for them in the DSO in Dallas, I was up there for 3, 4, maybe 5 months and got immersed in it. And was like, wow, this is different. I like this. It's like a specialty. I was able to bring the skills and things that I learned in contracting electrical to solve problems and mitigate things that we were going through up there during that time, and helped get those things turned over. Knew how to talk to contractor, knew how to look for inspection reports, knew how to ask the right questions to get things resolved and done. And so that was when I got introduced, and then, worked for that company for a while, and then decided to go off on our own, and been doing that for like 14 or 15 years now, just dental specific.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing the same thing, managing the day-to-day, liaison for the doc, just answering the questions for the contractor, because the docs are busy, right? They're looking to do a startup or an expansion or something. They don't have time to be answering some questions for the contractors, or going through submittals, or reviewing change orders, or reviewing times and schedules, and we do that for them on the regular every day, as well as our site visits. And so we help save them the time that they'll lose during that, or chasing the ball down during design phase. It just depends on where they sign up with us, on how we help them save that time, and that can happen. Sometimes they can ask a contractor. Once told me one time, he goes, "Man, you've really helped us save a lot of time, because I asked the doc on another project a question like a week ago, and I haven't heard back from him." I'm like, "Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
I can't let it go that long."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So help me out with, okay, so the construction world to a lot of people is just a big mystery. And with not having a base level of knowledge leaves a lot of room for people to take advantage of, say, healthcare providers that are looking to expand, build from scratch, or take an existing gray shell and turn it into, a functional dental practice. So I want to push as much business towards you as I possibly can with my podcast. But, you can't possibly take all the business in the world, right? So for those people that don't have the opportunity or the privilege of working with you, what are some of the basic main steps that we have to make sure that we're checking off when we're vetting, a contractor, when we're working with, say, a designer, with permitting, architect, and a contractor? What are some of the basics that a dentist that's never been in charge of a construction project should check off?
Yeah, so those are great questions, because the biggest one is when you're talking to a contractor. A lot of times dentists will talk to a contractor, say, "Hey, I'm looking at this building over here, whatever address." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I know that building. Yeah. And I'm looking at buying it. What do you think? Do you think it'd be a good dental office?" Well, the contractor doesn't really know what their finishes are going to look like, what their style is, what philosophy they're going to follow as far as sizes of treatment rooms or placement or anything like that, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll give them just and we've heard this 100, if not 1,000 times. That's like, "Oh yeah, that building, we could probably do it for you for easily $100 a square foot, or 120 a square foot, and the dentist will come to us after they receive a bid from them that didn't come out to be not even $150 a square foot. They'll say like, "Well, I talked to this contractor and he said he could do it, when he had first talked to him, for 100 to 120 a square foot. But now that he's got in my drawings, he says that, it's going to be somewhere along the lines of, $170 or $200 a square foot or more." Mm-hmm. I'm like, "Well, right. Let me see who did your design, your drawing." They'll bring it to us and we'll look at it. And my background is in construction, right? I can look at specific things. MEPs are the first things I look at, because depending on who draws them up, they'll overdraw them. So sometimes the air conditioning maybe have a little bit too many dampers, controls, or fluff in it, or too much zone dampening or something in it. The electrical, obviously, that's easy for me to look at, because sometimes they have too many bells and whistles in that, or lighting control panel, or too much energy controls that are redundant, that don't need to be in there. Mm-hmm. And the plumbing sometimes will require things that are not required in that certain area. So sometimes they'll put stuff, for instance, in California where you have seismic activity, they'll put that in some place like Colorado or Utah, or even Wyoming. And it's like, "Hey, this doesn't apply in here." Mm-hmm. Or there's tornadic or different things that are in different parts of the U.S., right? Hurricanes, you got hurricane things that are in Florida, the Gulf Coast, that in Florida, Louisiana, all the Gulf Coast states there, right? And so there's things that some people will put in the drawings, and we take that stuff out. So, okay, well, let's value engineer this thing out. So then we'll start going into the meat and potatoes of that, looking at the drawings, taking some of the MEP stuff out first, and then we'll go into, okay, what kind of wall finishes are we talking about? Let's look at the wall finishes, because the finishes are what drive up the cost of any build. MEPs, and then it's the finishes, because they may be speccing out some really expensive granite or some really expensive LVT that's coming from like, Paris or something, and it's not necessary. And we see it all the time. And so we'll start taking that. So look, you can get like materials that look the same, will still have longevity and hold up, but are a lot less expensive, and you get them stateside here. So we'll go through that process first with them. And, we've been able to save some docs, well over $1 million by doing that process, depending on their build size. So that, like the $1 million one, over $1 million, was a ground up. And he brought that to us and said, hey, man, I don't know what's going on here. The numbers just don't seem right. So let me look at that. So we started looking at it. We went to another contractor in a certain market that we worked with. We had him look at it, and he said, oh yeah, we can change this stuff out. And I said, okay, well, I have a list here that we created. Look at this stuff first. And so he looked at that, and estimates are free. Most contractors are going to give you an estimate for free, right? So if I get my yard cut, if I have my house painted, even myself, or you get your swimming pool, if you have a swimming pool cleaned, you're going to always get an estimate first, right? From somebody. You're not going to just like, hey, I need my pool cleaned, come over and get it done, and then you get a bill for like $500, right? So there's some guys that will say, well, I got this contractor he's going to give me an estimate, but he's going to, he wants to charge me, $3,000 or $4,000 for the estimate. And I went ahead and paid it because I want to know what he's going to give me. But then he gets he gets an estimate for, $2 million, for his build. And then they're like, oh my gosh. And they're like, well, we'll credit you the estimate that we gave you. I'm like, no, that's not the way it should work, Doc. And so then, certain offices, we've been able to save them over $1 million. Some we've been able to save them, $200,000-$300,000. It just depends. There's some that, have been less, of course, but, we like to be able to talk to the different people. So say the architect did the design for somebody. Well, we're not looking to step on anybody's toes or call anybody out. What we'll do is we'll work with the architect to figure out, like, do we have to use this material? Do we have to use this type of engineering? Those kind of things to help kind of roll costs back. Because by this time, the doc has already paid the architect for this work. And so there's not going to be any credit given back. So we're having to work with them to tell them, like, look, let's kind of scale some of this back. And usually the architects are very happy for us to help them, because they're able to save a client, and they're able to help kind of see the difference of what we bring to the table. At first, they're kind of a little apprehensive, but then they realize, like, no, we're just there to help. We're not there to like tell them what they did wrong or anything like that. We're not there to tell anybody that. We're there to just kind of help control cost and get the doc in his startup or his relocation, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's
So,
great.
yeah,
That's great. What are some of the basic ways to like vet out a contractor in your particular area? Are we looking at the register of contractors to see if there's any kind of lawsuits? Are we doing a background check? Are we gathering references? I've literally been in a situation where I was looking for a contractor in a certain market, and I didn't have anybody to ask. So it was like Yellow Pages at the time, or a Google search. So there's very little to go by often, except for just meeting with somebody and saying, he seems like a nice guy. I really don't have anything else to go by. So what are some of the checks that we could do to make sure that they're legitimate and they're not a crook?
Yeah. So we belong to different organizations, much like dentists belong to these different organizations where they're able to, look up different consultants or different people or talk. Well, we belong to the same organizations where when we're looking for somebody, depending on what market they're in, because we cover all 50 states. And if we haven't worked with anybody in that particular area, say we haven't worked in Montana, right? We haven't done a project in Montana for whatever reason. Then we go through our search on our group, and we'll look for dental, and we type in dental specific by city or zip code or area. And then what we'll do is we'll find that. And some DSI members have reached out and asked us. And so they reach out and ask, and they can feel free to reach out and ask if they need, somebody or an idea to go, where to go, where to look for somebody. And, we give them a list. But how we vet them is we look, see who they are, what their work experience has, see if there's access to some sort of portal for permit history to be able to look that up. Cause I'll look at permit history when I can, if it's available. Sometimes you have to register and you're not able to. But we'll look that up. For them to be able to do it themselves is, of course, always ask colleagues. Dental equipment providers would be somebody big. When you're talking to contractor, if you cold call a contractor and talk to a contractor and you're getting a bid from them, there's different groups that are larger firms and they have salesmen within the company. So you're not really talking to the estimator, you're talking to the salesman of the contracting company. And you're going to know who that is because he's going to remember your birthday. He's going to remember what you told him last. He's going to remember, your kids' names, where at the last meeting you're at. He's going to remember that stuff. And if you ask him a specific detail about the bill or the bid, he's not going to remember. He's going, well, let me get back to you because I'm going to have to look into that, see what that cost for that flooring is or that kind of lighting or whatever. So you're talking to a salesman there. You're not really talking to the estimator, which is who you want to talk to. You want to talk to the guy that's actually putting the numbers together, build that relationship. Because the guy doing the estimate that's in the background, you're in the queue. You're a number. He's got to get this one done. He's got to get that pricing done. And there's really not any ways. So if you ask somebody the salesman for a way to save money, you're not really going to get that. So you have to find out who you're talking. Is he the actual estimator or is he a representative of the company? I guess is what they would call it. And then you're going to want to cross-reference, of course. Better Business Bureau is something that they have access to. Everybody has access to. We even use it sometimes to cross-reference for ourselves. I make calls to the contractors. For me, it's easy, guys. I can call a contractor and talk shop, right? And we can just talk about different things, different questions, different scenarios. It's not like I have a checklist of things I'm asking him, but when I'm having a conversation with him, then I know, does he know his stuff or does he know how to, or is he just somebody that's dancing around different questions or things we're talking to, Yeah. Does he know stair pitch or roof pitch? Does he know, wall density, stuff like that. And then I can get a good gauge of like, yeah, this guy knows his stuff. He's good. Find out what their bandwidth is. Cause that's really big right now. Finding out what somebody's bandwidth and capacity is because they just continue to take work. And we don't do that on our end because the level of service will suffer. So I have to be kind of particular how we do things because we're like a micro company here. Yeah. So
tell me about how it works. If you guys are working with clients in all 50 states, you're based out of San Antonio. So you have a very unique kind of business model. Most contractors, dental specific or not, work in one geographic state or region and don't have the capacity to cover an entire country. So how does it work with you guys? If we were to call you and somebody say in Oregon wanted to work with you guys, what would that look like? How does your business model work?
So first I have to ask them a particular set of questions because I have to see where they are in the process, what their dynamic is like, what kind of build is like, who are they working with? Because if they're working with the contractor that I've already worked with or that I know in that market, because I've worked in Oregon before, then I would say, depending on who you're working with, you should be in good hands. Who's your dental equipment provider? Who's doing your IT work? Who's doing your cabinetry? The key of what we do is in the outside vendors because bringing all the outside vendors is one of the most important things because the drawings are the drawings. They don't show what these outside vendors are doing or how they're collaborating because they're not. And that's why we have what we do. So checklist is big on what we do. If we take the project on, right, we determine like, hey, you know what? This guy's going to need some help because, he's really busy. He's got a lot going on or something, or she does, and they're going to need some help here. And so, there's different people out. There's one guy providing chairs, and there's somebody else providing, vacuum compressor, and maybe they're buying supplies from somebody else or some other equipment. Because the old days of everybody buying from one person or one dental equipment company, really, we haven't seen that in a while, and not at least on our side, on the construction side. We're seeing people buying chairs from somebody, buying compressor and vacuum, maybe an autoclave or something else, or, the CVCT comes from somebody else. So there's a lot of coordination there. People don't talk and they're putting, computers and monitors in different places and following different philosophies. And the doctor's like, oh, well, I go to my practice and it's where I want it. And so that's where we come in. We're like, okay, we sit down and ask specific questions, go through our checklist, make sure things line up in the operatories, make sure things line up in the sterilization in the lab. We find out, where the penetrations need to go and all that kind of stuff. And so when we come out for our visits, we work remotely mostly, but when we come out and do our visits, a few times, then that's when we come at key times. So like chalk walk, box walk, and then we come out and do punch, or we come out and do box walk and we'll do a ceiling walk. It just depends. Box walk is one of the ones that we really don't like to miss because it's so crucial at that time when you're closing the walls up and putting the drywall on. And if you forget like placement of power for a monitor or where the CPU is going to go or where the ceiling TV is going to be placed and you need the power for that and the data, or you need to get an HDMI on the wall, or if you miss the penetration for the suction or the pigtail for the nitrous, forgot to get ordered for that and it's not on your checklist, then it's kind of hard to explain how that happened. So we take what we do very seriously. And so Veronica, John, and I are the ones that do it primarily. So Veronica and John and I all wear different hats. Veronica primarily does our 3D scans and their bidding services. John does our floor plans, does our site visits also. And then I do the CM work, which is construction management, and then review bids also. So, but it's it just depends on what service they go with. Some will go all the way. Some will just go with different little things that we have.
So what is the best time to reach out to somebody like you, a construction manager? Would that be, prior to working with an architect? Or
yes.
Would it be easier for you guys to approach an architect together as the construction manager, or architect first and then you guys?
So I would say when they have their space, it would be good to reach out to us, and they're like fairly certain that they want to be there. I would say reach out to us so we can talk to you about the space and what the possibilities are. Whether you use us for design or somebody else, it doesn't really matter. We treat every job the same. Okay. And that way we can help you talk to an architect, vet them, find out what their deliverables are, because there's a wide range. Some will do, permit ready drawings. Some will only do bidding documents. Some will only give you like limited pages of work. And some won't do any resubmittals, or they won't give you any data back for like the city when you go for permit review. So we have to, I like to get their deliverables, put them, just like if I was doing a bid from contractors, ABC, and we bring out all the divisions and we look to see where the numbers line up for all of them. I like to do the same for architects to determine where they come in at. And we help the docs with that to decide, like we make a recommendation, who they should go with and who they should talk to.
I like it. What is the size of job that you prefer to do? Is there a job that's too small? I know that you probably would say that there's no job that's too big, but is there a job that's too small to bring somebody in like you?
So I would say if you're only going to do say you got an office that you bought, a couple of years ago or something, and now you're making some money on it, and you may want to do a remodel, but you only want to do maybe some flooring or painting, maybe turn that one big docked office into a chair, put a chair or two in there. I would say that's probably a little bit too small. If it's, I think the smallest job we've done for tenant improvement has been 900 square feet that we help somebody with. Because, and at that, I think I was in Hawaii. Yeah, I was in Hawaii. And so it was so small. It was so packed, so dense. We had everything packed into that office, that you needed, right? Because you need a lab stereo, you need a compressor room, you need the chairs, you need a business office. But they couldn't get a console, they couldn't get a kitchen, but they had a kitchenette. So we helped them with that. And of course, we didn't turn that one down in Hawaii, but we did. We got it done. It was tough, but we worked through it and got it done. But there's been some, for size, we've been doing a lot of ground up lately. And I like it because it's sharpening my skills. It's keeping me, just up there with the latest things that I was going to CE for anyway, but I really wasn't using because I still have to go to CE because I want to maintain my licenses. And so it's kind of neat to be able to use that and determine the newest and latest things. We also go to CE for ourselves for building conferences that they have around the U.S. I'm not allowed to buy any tools because I really don't use them, but I like to look at them when I go to the CE classes over there. The Walt's got some cool stuff.
Let's talk dimensions here. So the kind of the rule of thumb that I've always used when somebody's talking to me about, hey, look, I'm looking at a 2,000 square foot space here. They're like, how many ops can I get into it? I usually say that about 300 square feet per operatory is what you can squeeze into a space if you're including hallways and common areas and all that stuff. Do you agree with that kind of square footage?
That formula?
Yeah,
that formula is good. It's like 300, 330 a square foot. Just depends on, what philosophy you're following, but that's about right. You got to have restrooms and hallways, like you said, common areas. It just depends. You could get a pretty good sized office with, 300 square feet, per 300 per square foot. I mean, for 2,000 square feet, I mean, that's pretty good. You get somewhere around 5 or 6 or something like that.
2,000 square feet.
Math is right.
You can get 6. You can get 6.
Yeah.
If it was 2,100, you'd hope to get 7.
You'd hope to get 7. Yeah. So, I mean, you really could. I mean, that's a good rule of thumb. And that's pretty much what we follow on our end.
Okay.
I think John and Veronica do it at like 330 a square foot. But we always start that way when they're designing offices, and John will always usually increase their people like, nah, let's bump that out to like 8.6, that width. And, 11 feet is usually pretty good. They're usually okay with that. It's usually the width that they kind of talk about. But
yeah, okay. So let's slow down and talk about that for a second. So what's the ideal kind of dimensions per operatory that you've seen? So it doesn't feel overly cramped. You can move around 360. Is that like 8.5 by 11? Is that ideal?
8. So 80% of the people that we've worked with are just, they're fine. They're fine with the 8 by 11.
Okay.
And it's only because once we build them and they're at that 8 by 11, and then they get in there and they get around the chair, they get in their chair and they swing around. They're using their equipment. They got their, delivery unit set up and all that, whether it's on the chair or on the 12 o'clock. They're like, you know what? This is more room than I thought. I thought it was going to kind of be tight. Cause when you see things chalked, it's still wide open, but you're imagining the wall. So you're actually shrinking it with your own, self, but it's really not that tight. We are doing more surgical places now, more surgical offices. A lot of docs are doing that, oral surgery and different things that we've done now. And those are like 8.6 is a minimum, but mostly 9, 10 feet wide. And there's been some offices that we've done. They're 2,000 square feet, doc, and they only got 3 chairs on them. That's because the rooms are like 10 by 15. And I couldn't understand that because, I've been doing like GP dental and pediatric dental and stuff. And so for a long time I did. And now we started doing that for the last 2 or 3 years now. I'm going to some of these offices. I'm like, oh yeah, I see all the equipment, all the people that are in there. I mean, it's just packed.
Yeah.
All the electronics and stuff. I'm like, oh. Yeah. Now we're starting to put different air conditioning units in those solely to keep those rooms cool. So luckily Veronica has a nursing background. So she was a nurse for 25 years. She retired. She came to help, full time over here. And so she's able to talk to the docs about, especially on the oral surgery side, about all the telemetry and things that they have to put inside those offices and screens and what they want to look for and recovery stuff and crash carts and things. And she starts talking about placement, about what she used to see at the hospital. And so it's like, I just stayed back and let her do her thing because, I don't really know anything about that. So it really helped. It really helped with that service. You never know things that you've done in the past that, you use nowadays, that just come up. So all the experience that I've had for the last 30 years, there's so many different things that we do to help mitigate things that we see in the field, coming to do our thing. And people are like, oh man, the inspector wants this or that. And you look and you're like, okay. And start thinking creatively, looking around the ceiling and the flooring, determining, okay, how can we make this work without adding any time or adding extra money? And, thank God for the experience that I have now and the things that I had to go through when I was younger. So I'm able to help, mitigate that now. And we're like, oh yeah, let's, do this or that and whatever. And the doc's like, great, let's do it. The contractors, yeah, we can do that. And it's funny because some of the actual tradesmen or guys, carpenters now are younger than me, much younger. And so they're like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. I'm like, well, it's just experience, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll come to you. You definitely won't forget that next time.
Yep. That's how you learn. Yeah. That's how you learn.
That's how you learn, man.
All right. One last question. It's a compound question. So what do we do when we're in a construction project and it's going way over time and way over budget? Like the estimate was wrong, or there's some change orders and like unforeseen complications. That's just dragging the project on, which is costing you money because you can't open, and also just extra expenses that seem to be getting tacked onto the project over and over and over again. Do we have any recourse when something like that happens as the customer?
So yeah, that one's pretty tough, because typically when there's change orders that come up that delay the project, you got to determine what's the root cause. Was it something added by the dentist, something that was added by somebody else representing the dentist, maybe a dental equipment guy, maybe an IT guy? Was the turnaround for the change order approved quickly? So whoever's reviewing the change orders, whether it's a dentist or his startup coach, because I know that there's a lot of startup guys out there that help people that maybe know a little bit about everything and maybe know a little bit about construction, but are they actually reviewing the cost per linear foot or square foot or whatever it is that they're doing for that change order? Are they breaking that down to figure out, is that a fair dollar amount? And is that actually necessary? So what we do is we have to do that quickly on our end. By reviewing the change order. What's the root? Was it something doctor, is that something you added? Or was it something that the inspector required? Okay, did he cite the code? Okay, he did. Okay, what's the code number? Let me look at it. Okay, did he look for the loophole? Because every code has a loophole. So there's always a way out of it, unless it's life safety. So then if we can't do it within a 12-hour period of getting it absolved, then we have to determine, is it fair market price for that change order? And then what's the turnaround time for that? Because some contractors will, use change orders to add more time, not only money, but more time. So you have to just really dig in and find out, what does that change order about, and who's the one that asked for it, and why was not foreseen ahead of time? Because it could be that they knew about it, but they maybe forgot to mention it or put it in the drawing. And some of those things we've got ahead of and said, no, it's right here. You knew about it. There's no more time. We don't have any more time. He's got to be out of that other office and he's got to get in here. So figure it out.
Yeah.
So
and that's when it helps
it's
really
tough.
to have
it's tough.
It really helps to have a construction manager at that point, right? Kind of an advocate. So you don't feel like you're by yourself trying to negotiate with somebody that hasn't lived up to their kind of their assurances,
Right. Yeah. So a lot of times the guys will say, "What's code? It was code. Well, what was this? What was this $2,000 change order for? What's that? Oh, it was code. Inspector came in and said you need to have an extra light or an extra head nozzle here or whatever it may be." And you're like, "Well, how many did he put? How long did it take him? Where's the breakdown?" Because they can give you a breakdown. They should give you a breakdown. They are going to add 10 to 15% on that change order as part of their fee, but they should be able to give you the breakdown of what it actually costs for that to make sure it's fair market. Now, we've had some where we've found in the drawing that they were supposed to be there. So it's all the time thing. For us, it's always trying to say, you don't have any more time, because usually we can get the change orders removed, unless it is for life safety, then we're kind of dead in the water at that. But if it's something that was missed because it wasn't picked up by the GC or the superintendent, we've had one where I got a lot of stories, but one I remember in particular just recently was somebody forgot to call in for an underground inspection for the electrical, and so there was a change order sent for that to the doc, and they came to us at "Hey, I'm going to send a change order to the doc and they called me as a courtesy, which was a mistake, because they usually send it to the doc to try to avoid us, circumvent us, but the doc always sends them to us anyway. So when he called me and said, "I'm going to send a change order to doc because we had to excavate the underground." I said, "Y'all poured concrete 2 days ago. What do you mean excavate? You had to chip it out?" He goes, "Yeah, we had to jackhammer it out and open it." I said, did somebody forgot to call in for an inspection? He goes, yeah, it was an inspection that was missed. And so we're going to have to, have it inspected and re-showed. I said, why are you sending the change orders to the doc? And he says, well, because it was, and then they got quiet. And I said, who forgot to call for the inspection? And I said, it had to be your superintendent, because I don't call in for inspections. I don't ever call in for inspections. I don't run your guys. Now, a lot of the contractor subs will call us to ask us for information because we can get it to it faster than what the contractor can, which is fine. Mm-hmm. That's just part of what we do. We don't mind that, but I don't dare call in for inspections. So he says, well, let me get back to you. And then within like 2 or 3 hours, there was an email went out to all of us, including the doc, saying like, hey, we had to chip out the concrete. We're going to add 4 days because we have to chip it out, clean it out, so that way they can inspect it again. And then we'll have to re-pour, get the landlord back out to verify, put the vapor barrier and pesticide, rebar and all that. And then it's like, oh my God. So
they ate that cost because it was their fault?
It was their fault, $7,000 for that one. So they ended up having to eat it. But, I was like, no, there's no way. Had we not been involved and they sent it to doc, then the doc would have just not known any better, thinking like, oh, something went wrong with the inspection, and so I just have to pay that. Like, no, you just gotta ask questions.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome, Tommy. Thank you so much for sharing your kind of knowledge with us today. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they're interested in having you kind of help them with their construction project? I think it's a really good idea to have a construction manager and somebody with your depth of knowledge going into any construction project.
Yeah. They can give me a call on our phone. My cell phone I have with me all the time, except for today, it's over in the other room. But it's 210-784-9777. And that goes straight to me. So I answer.
One more time.
Or they can reach out to us. It's 210-784-9777.
Okay.
And then they can always reach out to us at info@26ldentalbuilders.com. They have any other specific information. So we'd be glad to help answer questions. I mean, that's what we're here for. We do it all the time. We don't, we probably, how it is, Doc, we probably answer like 90% questions and 10% we get hired on for, which is okay, because we're here to help. I mean, I don't mind helping. Can't do all the work, like you said. So yeah, I got to try to get back into flying. So.
Exactly. All right. So that's 2, the number 2, SIXL dentalbuilders.com.
That's correct. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Us. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Can't wait to see you again in person. Hopefully it's sometime soon.
Yeah.
And
I hope so.
Appreciate you sharing your expertise today. It was great.
It was great. Thank you, Dr. Costas. I really appreciate the time. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.
And we'll see you soon.
Sounds good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the founder and CEO of 26L Dental Builders, Tommy Morales.